Dearly beloved, we have gathered here today to get through this thing called Mix CD. My name is Mike, part of the SPDM crew, and I love making Mix CDs. Each week, we give our guests a theme and an 80-minute time limit for which songs they're going to pick for their Mix CD. This week, we are going to be talking about movie musicals, but very specifically, we're going to be talking about movie musicals of the 21st century. And the reason why we're going to be talking about this is because I have Heath Lynch on here. Heath, how's it going?
Hello. Thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
Of course. So Heath and I write for Sip Pop. Heath also writes for Knock on Wood, a website that our buddy Rowan has created as well. He's also the host of the Franchise Paradiso podcast as well. And Heath recently wrote an article for Knock on Wood about the 25 best musicals of the last 25 years. So, can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because I read the article. You asked us at Sip Pop about some ideas for different movies to include on this. So, talk to me about what inspired you to write the article and just tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So this actually came about because of Wicked, specifically 100% inspired by the new Wicked movie. But to understand that inspiration, I have to go a little bit into myself. I am a massive film fan and film connoisseur, or at least I'd like to think I am. I'm probably more of an idiot than anything, and that's fine.
How
But I
dare
like
you? How dare you? No.
I like to watch a lot of movies, and one of my favorite genres is musicals. This is because I was raised on musicals. My city, I live in St. Louis, has a large outdoor amphitheater. In fact, it is the largest outdoor municipal amphitheater in the country. It sits over 10,000 people, and it is in the middle of Forest Park, where they hosted the 1904 World's Fair here in St. Louis. Some of the original structures are still up in the park. It's really cool. But this massive amphitheater is something that my family had season tickets to growing up. So I've been watching musicals for literally as long as I can remember. My memory, it does not exist without them, seeing stage performed musicals. So I've always been enamored by them. And that is transferred to film as well, where I've always loved and been enamored by musicals. However, that does not generally align with public consensus. Most people, especially in this day and age, are just not a fan of musicals. Now, this isn't the golden era of Hollywood. This isn't the 30s through the 50s, where every third movie was some form of a musical, presumably. And that was just a massively popular form of entertainment that has dwindled significantly. And I have always felt like that's not fair. I understand why it's not as popular. And I even understand when people say that musicals just don't do it for them. But it's almost gotten to a point over the years where there's backlash. Like, how dare a musical even exist in the first place? And that's where I start to get frustrated. I'm like, just because you may not appreciate it or it's not for you doesn't mean that it doesn't have an audience, and that some people like myself don't love it or see value in it. And so I saw Wicked, and I've already seen the stage production. I actually saw it earlier last year. I went and visited my friends Foster and Rowan, who I do Franchise Paradiso with. And I went to New York, and Foster and I saw it together on Broadway, and it was a magical experience. I loved seeing that show. So I was really excited for this film. And when the film came out, it reminded me of the golden age of Hollywood. The massive tactile sets that actual artists built and produced, these exquisite costumes, these bold color choices, and this very distinct color palette, long musical numbers. There's a grandeur to it and a sense of scale that you just don't see much in film anymore, period. Not just musicals, but film. And it impacted me in such a way. I was like, I loved it. I felt like I was elevating out of my chair watching Wicked in the theater. And what was really great is all the reviews were coming out the same, and not just from critics, but audiences were loving this movie. And I was like, this feels like a cultural moment to me. It feels like a shift where musicals over the past 25 years since the turn of the century, with Chicago winning Best Picture in the early 2000s, and you have jukebox musicals like Moulin Rouge being so successful, and other stage adaptations like Les Miserables coming out, but then other unique and original things like the Disney musicals like Moana, or even parodies of Disney musicals in within a Disney musical itself, like Enchanted, all these things. It felt like there was just this slow revitalization, like a regrowth of that passion for the musical genre. It's still nowhere near what it would have been in the 30s and 50s. And that's fine. And it never will be again. To be clear, that's never going to happen. But there's a passion to musicals now that I don't think I've seen in my lifetime. So I wanted to take this moment to write an article where I could assess and express what I think the best 25 musicals of the last 25 years, seeing as we are now 25 years into a new century, what those best 25 films would look like, kind of as a way to gauge where we've come from, and really take stock of what's been good so far, and also kind of as even a reference list for maybe people that saw Wicked and really loved it and want to learn about more musicals, and they want to say, hey, what else is good? I don't know. And you could look at a list like this and be like, oh, so these are some of the best musicals out there. I'll go search and find these out. So there's my very long-winded answer as to why this article came about in the first place.
So, and you had very specific criteria for this as well, because it's not like you wanted the musicals in here to be legit musicals,
Yes.
not like a Bohemian Rhapsody, which has stage performances and is kind of considered a musical, but it's more of a music biopic
Yes.
instead. So you were very careful about which ones you wanted to pick.
Yeah. I defined it as a traditional musical versus a movie musical. Or another way I would define it, I would say, is it a movie about music, or is it a musical movie? And those
Mhm.
are two different things. To your credit, to your point, Bohemian Rhapsody. Is it a movie about music? Absolutely. It's about Queen, and it's about Freddie Mercury, and it's a bad movie. And it's all of these things. But it is a movie about music where there are musical numbers and we see songs being performed, but I wouldn't call it a musical. What to me makes something a musical in the traditional sense is when there is a heightened sense of reality,
Mhm.
where people, characters within the narrative framework of the story, can transcend reality around them and spontaneously burst into song and or dance, and that is seen as completely justified and normal behavior.
Mhm.
And that's the key. If someone broke out into song and dance in the middle of Bohemian Rhapsody,
That'd be weird.
that would be weird. That's a little different. The only time we see people singing is when they're in the studio recording, or they're writing music, or they're performing on stage. It's no different than I referenced other great films like A Star is Born with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, Straight Outta Compton, genuinely one of my favorite music biopics in the last several decades. Those are great examples. Or other examples would be of a different type of film, would be like something like Pitch Perfect. Pitch Perfect is something where people perform music out of nowhere, but it's understood within that world because they're a cappella singers. They're supposed to be doing that. They're still performing on stage or in front of other people. Or something like Sing Street.
Mhm.
Again, another brilliant film, a brilliant film that I absolutely love, but that's not a musical.
Mhm.
It's them writing songs and then performing it, or them making music videos for their art. They are artists performing songs. They're not just random people spontaneously bursting into the song. The only part of that movie that maybe you could make an argument comes close is there is one scene where they're performing at a gymnasium, and he starts to imagine his performance in front of the school congregation and teachers and stuff. And then it almost becomes that heightened kind of fantasy reality, but then it quickly dissipates and it's never seen again throughout the rest of the film.
Right.
So that's what I was looking for, is films that have that heightened sense of reality, that's almost sense of fantastical wonder, that can break out into song and dance out of nowhere. And that's just normal behavior. That's just how characters and people in that world react. The only true exception to that I made was Hamilton, which that is absolutely a musical on Disney Plus, but that's not a film. That is a recording of a stage performance. And I was exclusively looking at productions that were produced for film with the medium of film in mind, not a stage performance which just happened to be captured on
Hmm.
film. Again, important distinction. And yeah, to your point earlier, I went to SIF Pop. You guys didn't know this, but I went to a lot of people. I went to family, I went to friends. I did a whole bunch of research online. In fact, by the time I had even come to you guys, I had pretty much gotten my list down. I knew which movies I was considering and which ones I wasn't, but I just wanted to make sure, like, hey, am I missing anything? You know, so I put that out there. Hey, here's what I consider a musical. I'm working on this project. What are films that have come out in the last 25 years since 2000 that you would consider fall into this category? And again, pretty much everything everyone had listed, I was already
It was at
considering
least on
going
the
over
radar.
anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was just nice to know, did I miss anything? Or also, which movies were talked about more often? Like, hey, it doesn't go unnoticed that something like Tick Tick Boom or A West Side Story or La La Land gets mentioned more than once by a lot of people, probably because a lot of people really like it and they're very popular. And again, those are things I all already knew, but again, just seeing that confirmation, it helps in making a list like this.
So we'll be sure to link the article because it's a great article, great
Thank you.
list of movies. It's clear that you love this medium or you love this genre of movies. So definitely we'll be sure to link it in the episode description to check it out because again, this is the inspiration for this particular list. So when I pitched this idea to you, one of the things, the caveat that I have is that there's an 80-minute time limit to this,
Yep.
which you and I both understand because we grew up in that era of mixed CDs.
Oh
This
yeah.
was very much our jam. And walk me through your process because you've got 25 movies that you could choose from, but you're going to run into a situation where you're not going to be able to get them all in. So,
Absolutely.
how'd you make your
Uh,
list?
yeah, so I am an elder millennial like yourself, and
Uh-huh.
I have incredibly fond nostalgic memories of making mixed CDs, just like Gen X has of making mixtapes and
Yep.
cassettes. It's no different. And I distinctly remember that 80-minute time limit because that's all you could burn on a CD back then. I know it all too well because it's almost its own enemy. You hate it so much because you just want to squeeze one more track in there and you can't.
There's nothing that sucks more than when you think you have the perfect list and then
Yep.
all of a sudden you realize I'm
You're over
over
by 23 seconds.
and
Oh,
you gotta cut something.
yep.
And I hear you, I see you, I get it, and I'm so happy to be talking with somebody who gets that as
Yep.
well. So I'm
My friends and I in high school, and it's funny when you reached out to me about being on the show because it made immediately brought back these memories. And I reached out to my high school friends. We made a series called The Inevitability of Jawsomeness. Jawsomeness, as in the Street Sharks Jawsome from the 90s. So that
nice.
was our very creative title. And we came out with an Inevitability of Jawsomeness volume every 3 months
Oh,
from
nice.
our freshman year of high school through our senior year of high school. And I was desperately like, man, if you still have those files anywhere, I would love to know what those exact track lists were in order so I can recreate those as playlists on Spotify because I would listen to that over and over.
Well, let's just put it this way. If you do find and you would like to potentially guest host and talk about them with your friends, let me know
Yeah,
because
sure.
happy to have you.
We have to see if they exist still, though. That's the key.
I'm sure they
I would hope so.
can think of
If they
something.
exist, they are on my friend's old Mac drives, and so we'll have to see if those even fucking boot up. So
Right. Well, keep me posted on that because I
yeah,
think that would be a lot of fun to reminisce about stuff like that.
yep. So getting back to the question at hand, though, so yes, cuts had to be made instinctively when you approached me about making this playlist of a mixed CD for a list of this nature specifically, where I'm distinctly listing 25 specific films to represent the best of 25 years, a quarter of a century's worth of time. The first place my mind went is I need one song per film. And I think
Mhm.
that's very natural. I didn't want to do it as a countdown as the actual list is, where I count down from 25 to 1. I wanted to integrate and have all the songs feel fluid. This is mainly because I really hate, and I've always hated this, when CDs have a drastic crescendo or decrescendo in quality. If your CD starts out with bangers and like the first 3 to 5 tracks are nothing but awesomeness, and then by the end
It
it's
just drags.
it's blah. I hate that because all that means is I'm taking the CD out of the player after track 5 and I'm disregarding half of your work. Conversely, if the first half of your CD is garbage but the back half is awesome, I'm just skipping ahead to the back half and I'm still missing half of your work. So that was important to me, that I had a well-rounded assortment of songs that were great the entire way through. And again, these are 25 of what I consider the best movies. So they're gonna be great songs, especially because these are 25 best. And I'm gonna pick the one song from each movie that I think best represents, or whatever I think fits best for the playlist.
Mhm.
But still, I wanted to just make sure I was integrating and shuffling things through to find the best flow for the album as well. But with that said, again, just not everything fit. So I had to make cuts. And here's where I made some of my decisions. First, several of the films on my list are jukebox musicals based off of specific artists.
Oh, okay.
Seeing as those were not original songs written for the film, for that narrative, or any construction thereof, I decided that those could be cut.
Okay.
Example, Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. Sure, I would love to have Mamma Mia on there. I would love to have Dancing Queen. I would love to have Fernando. There's a lot you could do on there. But the thing is, if you want to listen to those songs, you can just go listen to ABBA.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
that's what they're there for. And so I did that for several movies here. Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. Did it for Across the Universe. Again, I love some of these renditions, but you can just go listen to a Beatles album.
Yep.
And then the other one, oh gosh, what was it? And now I'm already forgetting. See, I know my list so well. Those might be the jukebox musicals that I decided to cut. Oh, no, a Rocket Man. That was it.
Yeah.
Elton John. And that one actually probably hurt the most because I actually have Rocket Man in my top 10. In fact, on my list, spoiler, that's my number 7. I think Rocket Man is an incredible film. But again, it's just Elton John songs. It's an incredible film because of the way it uses those Elton John songs to tell an emotionally thematic and resonant story mixed with Taron Egerton's amazing performances, yada, yada. But for the sake of this playlist, I was just like, it's just going to be an Elton John song. So those 3 are gone. So that instantly took me from 25 down to 22. Other cuts I made included Dancer in the Dark. Frankly, you don't watch Dancer in the Dark really for the musical numbers. You watch it for the other aesthetics or depressing tones and situations in that film. I even acknowledged that one of the songs was nominated for Best Original Song at the Oscars. I forget what it's called. I think it's the I See or something. It's the one where Bjork showed up to the Oscars dressed as a swan. That one.
Yeah.
But as much as even I can enjoy that song, that's certainly not a banger that I'm
No.
looking to repeat. And out of the context of the film, that song also doesn't work that well. So that was another easy cut for me. And so that got me down to 21 tracks, but I still needed to make room to get under 80 minutes. And at that point, I just kind of started to look towards the end of my list. Since these were the quote unquote lower ranked films that I had, maybe they would be more amenable to seeing them go. So I cut out Frozen. This may be blasphemous to some, but this is
as a parent of 2 daughters, no, it ain't.
That's literally exactly what I was going to say. This may be blasphemous to some, but as a parent of 2 daughters, I'm totally fine with never hearing this soundtrack again the rest of my fucking life, let alone the song Let It Go. Do I acknowledge that this is a good movie? Yes, of course. I put it on my list as number 24. Do I acknowledge that these are great songs? Of course, they're well constructed and they're incredibly catchy. Let It Go won the Best Original Song at the Oscars for a reason. This movie won Best Animated Feature at the Oscars for a reason. That doesn't mean that I'm not sick of it. And that's not me. That's virtually every parent that's existed for the last decade since this film came out in 2014. So I'm just kind of over it. And I'm kind of okay with my playlist not having something from Frozen.
Yeah.
To that end, I also cut a song from Dreamgirls. This was kind of in the same vein as Dancer in the Dark for me. In fact, and I'll give away as well, the last one I also cut was Roald Dahl's Matilda the Musical. These movies are really good because of other things happening in the movie. Just like Dancer in the Dark, while the musical numbers might be really good and especially work really well within the context of the film, they're not musical bops that I'm just going to turn to. Like and I'm in the minority there, especially probably for like something like Dreamgirls, when you have Jennifer Hudson belting out, and I'm telling you, I'm not going. That is an anthem, sir. I mean, she is crushing it. She won an Oscar for that
for
song,
that song.
pretty
Absolutely.
much because of her rendition of that song. She won Best Supporting Actress, but she deserved it. She was great, but like, it's not a song that I personally turn to and that I'm switching over to Spotify to listen to. And the same thing goes for Matilda the musical. I love Matilda the musical, and within the context of me watching the film, I really enjoy these songs. But the only ones that get close to being anywhere near something I would want to listen to outside of that would be When I Grow Up or Revolting Children. And even then, they're not the most catchy or entertaining songs. They're totally serviceable, but just not when compared to these other films that I have available to me and other options. So those are all the movies that I cut and that didn't make my playlist, so that I could make it under the 80 minutes. So I ended up with 18 tracks from 18 different movies for a total of 1 hour and 17 minutes and change. So just over 2 minutes under the cutoff.
So I kind of went through a similar process because the first thing I did was I gathered up all the songs that I would even consider. And unfortunately, my playlist was like 3 hours long. And this is where it just gets painful for me. So the first thing I
Okay.
did was, yep, one song per movie. And that was particularly tricky for me with certain movies like Mamma Mia was definitely one where it's like, oh, I could throw a bunch of these on, but
Yeah.
Mamma Mia fell into the same situation for you that it did for me as well. Is that, or for me that it did for you? I ended up cutting it because we could
If you
just
want to
listen to
listen to
ABBA,
ABBA, just
then
go
just
listen to
listen to
ABBA.
ABBA.
Yeah.
I wanted to try and see some of the, or try to incorporate some of these. Look, with some of these movies, it's an obvious pick on which
Yes.
song that you possibly want to do. So I have a feeling that we're probably going to have some overlap as well,
Yep.
which that's to be expected. But then for me, there's certain ones that I either have some type of like core memory about, something that has to do with my kids. So, for example, the song that I have from Frozen, for example. My youngest daughter is in a Frozen phase right now, and I want to rip my fucking head off because it's bad enough that the oldest one got into a Frozen phase when it first came out, or
Yep.
when not when it first came out, but when she
When
first
she
saw
was
it.
old enough to appreciate and get it. Yeah.
But now we're doing this again, and it sucks a lot.
Yeah.
But there is one particular song from that, maybe not the most conventional song, but a song that I remember that those two particularly like, and I ended up shifting things around a little bit for that and also for time purposes as well, because my goal was to try to incorporate as many songs as possible.
Yeah.
And as much as I tried, I couldn't get them all. And I'm sure you tried a couple of different ways as well.
Oh yeah.
And it's hard. So I ended up with 21 songs. Not all of these songs were my first pick, but I at least wanted to give it a shot, wanted to give it a good representation of that. Because also, one thing that I even considered doing as well is, do I even want to incorporate some songs that were not on your list? Like my original list had some of your honorable mentions in there with Princess and the Frog
Yeah.
and The Color Purple and one from the Phantom of the Opera. Just anything without Gerard Butler, I would have been fine with from the Phantom of the Opera. But I ended up cutting all of those because it was like, there's a reason why these got left off the list, and it's
Yeah.
not because they
They're
are
not bad.
bad movies
Yeah.
by any means, but if you're looking for a top 25, you got to make hard decisions. And that's the problem with this as well. Some of these, you got to make hard decisions. I ended up at 1 hour and 19 minutes, and I ended up having to adjust a couple of things just to get it to that
Yeah.
because the Wicked song I wanted to put on originally wasn't going to work. And I ended up
Because
picking
it's so
another one
long.
because a lot of the songs in Wicked are really long.
Well,
So,
and that's one of the things, just to jump in, musicals traditionally, not always, but traditionally have longer musical numbers than a traditional song.
yeah.
Your average radio airplay song is roughly 3 minutes. If you're looking for like a hip hop or R&B, you might be pushing 5. A musical song almost routinely can hit 4.5 to 5 minutes. A really in-depth musical song, and there's one that I think we're talking about from Wicked, is on Spotify is 7 minutes and 40 seconds. 7 minutes, almost 8 minutes actually, of an 80-minute limitation. You're talking 10% of your entire album or playlist going to one track. That is not a normal distribution of time when it comes to making a CD project like this. But I'll even give away the game a little here. We haven't gotten to it yet. I ended up still sticking with that 7 minute, 40 second track because I thought that the track itself was so powerful and important that it had to be here. But because of that, that means other movies, I picked other tracks that were like way short just to try to accommodate and make room for that because it's such a lengthy one. So yeah, you really have to do a give and take. You're not wrong at all.
So it's interesting because the original Wicked song that I was going to pick, I think is actually a little bit longer than
Oh
that
wow.
it's because it spans a long.
Oh, then I know which one you're talking about. Yeah. Yep.
So the original song I wanted to pick was longer than that, and for that same reason, I was like, I got to be more judicious with my time. And although it broke my heart to have to reshuffle the deck a little bit, I ended up picking that same Wicked song because after thinking about it for a second, there's no way that I could have not included that
Yeah.
on the list because I took into account also what it meant to me when I watched it as well. So that also came into play too. So
I
I get
I I how I went about picking my songs, I'll go into that here and as well like the order. So I picked my songs again, one per film. If there was a song from a movie that was so large, so looming that it almost transcended the film itself to become a part of pop culture zeitgeist, I almost felt obligated. And
Mhm.
some of those movies, I just had to pick those. And I'll point those out when we get to them. I think they'll be quite apparent. But it's just like, oh, if we're going to talk about this movie, we have to talk about this song. So some of these, I feel like my hand was almost forced.
Yeah.
But because of the time constraints I'm talking about, other times I even had to take out the most famous or popular or well known, however you want to phrase it, song just because of the time constraint. And in which case, I started to get a little bit more creative and put in my own personal flair of like, okay, this may not be the most popular song, but I know this is a really powerful song that either A affects me emotionally or it can take me back in time. I can remember where I was the first time I saw this or heard it, or just one that I really think is a bop and I enjoy going back to and re-listening to and I can sing along with it or all kinds of different connections or reasons why I could come up with that. And it really gets interesting once I start talking about the order and we'll go into it again when we get there, but like I going back to what I said earlier of I want a pretty even keel through my playlist. I don't want the beginning to be great and the end to suck and vice versa. So I really tried to interweave so that there's a nice flow and rhythm to the album itself, to the playlist. And this brings me to my hard and fast rules. My hard and fast rules that I've had when making mixes and playlists since I was a freshman in high school 25 years ago in 2000. My first song has to be one of the catchy, hookiest songs ever to introduce people to the playlist. But it has to be an intro song. And what I mean by that is the first few bars and stanzas, the first 30 seconds to a minute and a half of that song are so crucial. It
Mhm.
has to properly build. What that especially means for something like this that's coming from a musical is it probably means that I'm picking a song that was the first song in the musical because it knows how to crescendo up and amplify and build that moment and get people excited and build dramatic tension and build atmosphere and all these things that you need to do in a musical film because it's not like I'm going to open with a ballad or I'm
No.
going to open with an expositional musical number, which are very common in musicals if you're not familiar with them, or a character development song like that's 2/3 of the way through the movie. That just doesn't work. So I needed a big opening number. And then on the flip side of that, as a closer, I do like to end in a ballad. I like to end by slowing things down, usually something that's more emotional and like thematically resonant within the movie, but even outside of the context of the movie, it can maybe make you think of certain things through your life, your experiences, your memories, or maybe even bring a tear to your eye. And then the other two rules I have is I very much view making a CD or a playlist like baseball lineups. My best hitter, my slugger is my 3 hole. My best song should be my third track, period. End of discussion, no matter what, anytime. Number one hooks people. Number two is usually a buildup. It's even bigger than number one, but still not the best. But track three should always be the best song on my entire album. And then my number four should be my second best. So your first 4 tracks in general, first 4 songs, should be an example of the entire album, what it's going to feel like in tone and tempo and pacing. All of that should be encompassed within those first 4 songs, and it should only build and get better, peaking at track 3 and going slightly down on track 4. So back to back 3 and 4 should be like your bangers. Number 3 should be the most iconic and what is probably the biggest or most well known, or yada yada. And number 4 should be maybe not the biggest or most well known, but the one that you personally know is probably the best constructed song. So that's how I went into this album, how I was thinking about placements, the structure, how songs would line up with one another. And I think it came out pretty well. I'm very excited to talk about it track by track.
When it came to order for me, I struggled a little bit with how to place some of these because I tried to not like completely mirror how they would appear in the actual musical itself, but it's still tricky because you want this to kind of flow in its own
Yeah,
way too. So I appreciate the fact that you do have some type of you have rules, you have things that you have methodology, and you just get me when it comes to mix CDs. So I'm very excited. So let's get into it. Let's
yeah.
start talking about this. So you have 18, I have 21. So why don't we go in groups of 3? And I'll go first since I've got more. So my first 3 that I have. So this is where I have my Frozen song, and it's Do You Want to Build a Snowman? And the reason why I picked Do You Want to Build a Snowman versus Let It Go, or versus, well, Let It Go. I picked Do You Want to Build a Snowman because I remember, oh, yes, I picked Do You Want to Be a Snowman because I remember the first time that my youngest watched Frozen, and they would do that sequence where they'd knock, and the youngest one would be like, Snowman. That's because that's all she could really
Sure.
she could really say. So I
And that's
thought that
just adorable.
it
So
was it's really fun. The tricky thing with this song is, boy, this song takes a hard right turn like 3/4 of the way through it, which that's something when I first saw Frozen, because I went to go see Frozen by myself because I knew none of my other friends would want to go see it. And
yeah,
as somebody who appreciates Disney pre having kids, I knew that there's no way in hell I was going to convince any of my friends to watch Frozen. So I went to go see it, and boy, like, Do You Want to Build a Snowman is like, oh, this is a fun, catchy thing. But that last part where it's like,
it's dark.
it is, ooh, that it hurts, and but it also sets the tone for how this is going to be, or how their relationship is so strained because because Elsa can't be bothered or can't interact with Anna the same way that she used to. So I really appreciated that. And if I had picked Let It Go, it would be more towards the middle, but
Mhm.
I ended up picking Do You Want to Be a Snowman as my lead off. My next song is my Sweeney Todd one. I picked No Place Like London. And to be honest, this was more of a time constraint, and because there's better songs in Sweeney Todd. I will concede that. However, I picked this because I just I like I just liked it. That's just kind of what it comes down to. And then my third one is Naughty from Matilda. And my daughter, when we first watched Matilda, she really liked it, and she recognized this because she heard it on TikTok. And not
Wow.
because me and my wife are like huge into TikTok, but is
The list you sent me has like Moulin Rouge first, and then Tangled, and then The Greatest Showman, and then Frozen, and the Sweeney Todd one you're talking about is all the way at the bottom.
yeah, I like just now like redid the order. So
Oh, okay.
okay, that's weird. But for this one, she heard it on TikTok from some friends at her after school care. And she would come home and she's like, "Sometimes you want to be a little bit naughty." I'm wait a second. We haven't seen Matilda that much. And not only that, when she likes a movie, she will watch it repeatedly. And Matilda was one that didn't
She's a
really.
kid, and that's what kids do, and they
Yeah,
drive us nuts. We love
yeah.
them, but that's what they
We
do. They ruin
yes,
movies.
they very much so. But with this one, this was the song that always stood out to her. And I'm glad that this is the song that stood out to her because it's a great way to introduce Matilda as a character. And I am potentially very excited for the prospect that I've heard rumblings and rumors that the girl who plays Matilda is maybe going to be Dorothy in Wicked for Good. And
Wow, that'd be. I'm trying to imagine that just because of her age. I guess
it feels
relative to how
feels
Judy Garland was, that could work, and she can sing. I'm just picturing her in Abigail still because she was
yes,
just the dancing ballerina vampire. So that's weird to me, but I could maybe see that work.
it would be an interesting take, but she can sing, so I will
Yeah.
give her
I
credit for that.
What matters is I want someone that can sing first.
Yes.
Obviously, no one's going to be able to be Judy Garland, but
Mhm.
we at least need someone that can sing.
Yeah.
It's more than I can say for some of the other people in Wicked.
Yes, very much. Because I've heard rumblings that her and Dove Cameron have been mentioned for Dorothy,
Mhm.
which I don't know. We'll see. And
Yeah.
but this is the song that it just my daughter loves that particular part in Matilda, and she sang that for like a week straight, and I was like, okay, I get it. But it reminds me of her. I love it, and we'll go with that. So Heath, let's go with your first three. What is give me your first couple tracks.
Yes, yes. So my very first one, again, I said I wanted to start with something that just felt like an opener that really built up everything that the playlist itself could be about, that you could imagine could be in the rest of the album, and something that also just encompasses a world of possibilities. And this is where I went with Another Day of Sun from La La Land. I'll even go into kind of movie by movie why I picked a track that I did. So when I look at La La Land, options include something like City of Stars, which actually won Best Original Song, but as much
Mhm.
as it won that, I think that's not even close to the best song in that movie. I'm actually shocked that won, especially over things like the audition song, Someone in the Crowd, or Another Day of Sun. So City of Stars wasn't on the table for me. Audition song also really wasn't on the table for me because while it works and it's certainly very emotional, it gets its resonance from the film itself and the structure of the narrative. It doesn't work as well outside of the film. So then I was down to more of the poppy and energetic songs with Another Day of Sun and Someone in the Crowd. And I just thought opening my album with Another Day of Sun would just be a great way to set things off. I think it's beautiful. It encompasses all the fun aesthetics that Damien Chazelle does with his infusion and love and appreciation of jazz. I think it's so creative, just being this large set piece ensemble that's doing almost a choir like performance at times of this track. And if you have seen the movie, just picturing them all dancing on top of cars on the LA freeway, it's great. It's magical. It reminds me of that hope and optimism of that anything is possible in a musical, and
Mhm.
thought that was a great way to open. Following that up, I wanted to do another just energetic one, and this actually might be, I'm not going to lie, my favorite song on this playlist on my album, and that's 96,000 from In the Heights. I don't know what would be considered the best song from that film.
It's
uh,
it's
you
probably
probably
this
have a
one.
lot of options. In the Heights itself, which is the opening title track, is probably something that you could consider. You could go more emotional with something like Alabanza. You could do something that's more staccato and poignant in its execution, like Blackout. You could go a lot of different ways with it. But, and again, this is maybe where you're really helped by seeing the film first. If you have seen 96,000 from In the Heights, it is maybe the greatest choreographed dance performance in film this century.
Hmm.
Out of all of these movies and musical numbers and all that we're going to talk about tonight, this is like the pinnacle. What they
Yeah.
pull off with this number is incredible. If you haven't seen the movie, just go to YouTube, type 96,000 In the Heights, and watch them perform this number. It is insane. It all takes place at a community pool in Manhattan. They do these crazy dance numbers throughout the pool, synchronized dancing, people literally disjointing and like popping their elbows and shoulders out of sockets to do like contortionist dancing. It's wild, but it's so magical. And what I love about this song is it also speaks to hope and aspirations, because it's about someone in their community won the lottery for $96,000, and it just asks a whole bunch of people, hey, what would
What
you
would you
do?
do? Yeah.
What would you do with that money? Someone wants to go to business school and educate themselves. Someone just wants to pay off their debt. Someone wants to just get a nice condo and get a new hairdo. And I could see all of those things bringing life and happiness to so many people, and it's so brilliant. But what's really cool is when you get to, there's one part where it goes full Lin-Manuel Miranda, and a guy starts rapping about
Yep.
political purpose and gentrification in their neighborhood and housing economic problems and all this, and it really blends together into this beautiful moment where at the end of the song everyone is singing their verse that you already heard from all their different perspectives layered on top of it. It's almost like singing in a round, but they're not all singing the same parts, so it sounds like a round. They're singing all of their verses over again, and it really almost emphasizes exactly what makes In the Heights so beautiful. Is it's about community. It's about all these people living together and finding a way to live with each other, and it's embodied within this song, and it's so cool. This is easily my favorite track to listen to from that film, and I think it just hits so hard here at number 2.
Hmm.
And that builds up to number 3, and this is what I think is this is where, again, it all, this whole article started with Wicked. So what I said earlier, my number 3 track has to be the best track, the banger track that hooks people and it's like, yep, I have to listen to the rest of this album no matter what. And so I'm putting Wicked here, and I put Defying Gravity. I know there's a lot of people that would say Popular should be the pick from Wicked, and I won't deny that Popular is a more popular song. If you actually go on Spotify, it has more plays, but it's not the song. It is
No.
not the showstopper. There's a reason why in the Broadway stage production that
This ends
Defying
Act One.
Gravity
Yeah.
ends Act 1 and sends you into intermission, and you're like levitating out of your chair. You're on a high from that experience. And they decided to end the movie with this number this time. And while I could understand some complaints about maybe the song is too long and there's too many breaks within the song, especially if you're watching it as the movie, there's a couple extra breaks, talking and exposition that happens. That's not in the stage production. What? Damn it. I don't care. It's
No.
magical. It's bliss. And if you're listening to the song on Spotify, they get rid of all of that. So it's just the track. This is the song that made me have to make a lot of concessions because this track is 7 minutes and 40 seconds long. Again, that's almost a tenth of my available runtime. But I felt that the track was so important and
Hmm.
so emotionally resonant. And the battle cry that Cynthia Erivo gives us at the end of that film, or at the end of that song, is so powerful and transcendent that there literally was no other option for me when it came to Wicked. Like, it was just like, oh, I'm making this playlist. Wicked is going to be in the number 3 spot, and it's going to be Defying Gravity. Everything else can work around that. So that's what I have. My opening of Another Day of Sun from La La Land, 96,000 from In the Heights, and Defying Gravity from Wicked. All 3 of these are just high octane, energetic, and they get more energetic as those 3 tracks go on, but also more emotionally resonant as those
Hmm.
3 tracks go on. So now by the time you're done with that 3rd track, you're done with Defying Gravity, you're just hooked. You're
Yeah.
in. This album is giving you everything.
So Defying Gravity is my last song. And
And that's
the
totally fair.
and so truth be told, my original song from Wicked was going to be Dancing Through Life.
Yeah, I knew
And
that's what you were talking about earlier because that song is also really long.
that song is really long. And I one of the things that I liked about Dancing with Life is that it does give a lot more people an opportunity to sing. And look, I've seen Wicked on Broadway as well, and I think Jonathan Bailey's voice is fine, but it's not to the heights that when I saw it on Broadway, or I didn't see it on Broadway. I saw it in Chicago. It didn't hit the same way, and it doesn't hit the same way that the original Broadway recording does either. And this isn't to say that Jonathan Bailey is bad in the role. It's just the singing was just like a tad bit lacking. And there's nothing wrong with that if he's still giving a good performance. But I think what it ultimately leads up to as well with Dancing with Life, with that scene where they're doing the dance. Boy,
At the
that
Ozdas
scene,
Ballroom.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, that part got me good
Oh,
when I
I was crying.
saw
I've seen the movie like 4 times already. I've cried every time.
it,
It's
it gets
beautiful.
me it gets me every time. And I but however, after thinking about it and just I guess having a pseudo come to Jesus moment, like what the fuck's wrong with me? It's got to be Defying
Yeah.
Gravity. And
It is the song. Like
it's
it's the song. You can't escape it.
because I've seen the musical, but when I saw this in theaters, I was still on the edge of my seat the whole time because, like you said, this is why we go to the movies. This is why to experience something like that. Because one of my favorite things sometimes when it's going to the movies is sometimes looking back and just seeing other people's reaction to things that I know are coming. And the way that they filmed it, the way because it's obviously very different than the stage performance because with Elphaba just being raised up in like off stage or like to the top of the stage like it's still cool the way that it looks, but just seeing her cape just like blow in the wind and just how everyone's like looking at her with this awe in the movie, it was just a really powerful and a really cool thing to watch. And even the emotional beat, like I get it from the people who are like, this is really long, and there's some cut sequences that are like, do we really need this? But Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo sold it so
Yeah.
well for me that I was like, I don't care. I really don't. So keep doing it. How are you feeling about the Wicked for Good? Because I don't know about you, but the second act is
So
going to be a little challenging to adapt.
we are burdened by glorious purpose. And that burden is the burden of knowledge.
Mhm,
You and I know what's coming because we've seen this play. There are
mhm,
some people that have not seen it. So, for the sake of then, I'm not going to say anything. But what I will say is that most musicals actually have a problem with their act two. Act
mhm.
ones are traditionally considered better than most act twos. And Wicked is one of the prime examples of that. The act one, the first act of Wicked, is significantly better than the second act. That's not my opinion. That's just kind of considered universal fact. Almost anyone you talk to who has ever seen Wicked or any critic's review that you ever read will tell you that Wicked Act 1 before the intermission is stronger and better than the second act. Again, not wanting to reveal anything. What I'll
Oh,
say is this.
yeah.
They have a challenge ahead of them, but if John M. Chu has shown me anything, and he directed In the Heights, and he has directed Wicked, and he directed the Step Up movies, which love them or hate them, at least shows that the guy knows choreography pretty much better than anyone. And he did some of those Justin Bieber movies, and love him or hate him, he clearly knows music. Like, if there is ever someone that could do it and pull it off, and John M. Chu, I trust. That's
Yeah.
kind of where I am at this point. I think they are absolutely going to have to modify what happens. There's genuinely not enough material in the second act to do it. I think they're going to have to add elements from the original Wizard of Oz, even more than they already naturally do in Act Two. I think we're going to have to see more of that,
Mhm.
especially with the aforementioned Dorothy.
Yeah.
And what they'll also probably have to do is pull in some stuff from the novel and showing the Wicked Witch being a bit wicked
Mm.
and terrorizing people of Oz. But again, I have faith that they can do it. And the overwhelming success in my eyes of Wicked, the first one from 2024, has made me so excited that it is my second most anticipated movie of 2025, only behind James Gunn's Superman. And so I'm very much looking forward to Wicked for Good, and I just hope they pull it off.
Yep, that's all we can hope for
Yep.
at this point. So, all right, my next three. So this is where I have my Across the Universe song, and I'll be very curious to hear if there is an Across the Universe, if which Across the Universe song you would have had on your list if you had time. But I picked I've Just Seen a Face. And the reason why I picked it is because it was just such an unexpected song to have in this when they're at a bowling alley of
Yeah.
all things. And also this sequence is really cool because with the cinematography, the colors, the dancing going on, and unlike the original Beatles track, they kind of speed this up a little bit,
Yes.
and it kind of makes it a little bit more of a pop song.
Yep.
And
That
I
bowling sequence is kinetic. It is energy to
Mhm.
the nth degree.
Look, there are more powerful scenes in Across the Universe.
Yes.
There's more fun scenes. But this is the one that just kind of resonated with me the most because truth be told, I had actually never heard this song by the Beatles. I wouldn't consider myself a huge fan of the Beatles, but this was one I was like, I don't recognize this at all. And this one made me go back and be like, oh, okay. I enjoy this, but I would never say that this version is better than the Beatles song.
Sure.
But this one for me is was just it was so much fun and just showcasing also that boy, Jim Sturgis can sing.
Yeah.
He's really talented and he should sing more often instead of not in the majority of the movies that he's done since this.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
To answer your question, if I had done Across the Universe, which again, I would have loved to, I love that movie. It's on my list for a reason. I would have done She's So Heavy. I think that that is the most transformative song of the film that differentiates itself more from the studio recording that the Beatles made than any other track. So it would have been the most unique, especially in the context of the film. If you have seen the film, using She's So Heavy to represent the weight of the government itself due to conscription and draft of the Vietnam War, and talking about the burden of the federal government and the armed forces and having to carry the American culture when most Americans see you as baby killers and all these other things that it's doing within that scene, even down to the visuals of how they show the people getting like their head shaved and being put into the army and being sent to Nam and physically having to carry the Statue of Liberty when they're shouting "She's so heavy." I thought it was brilliant. So that's
Mhm.
the track I wanted to go with before I realized no, I have to cut the jukebox musicals where it's just one artist. I don't have space.
Yeah. My number five is also your number six, and that is America from West Side Story. So I will
Yes,
defer to you when you. So I guess this is the we will wait until it's at
sure.
your spot and we'll kind of talk about it together. And then my next one is from Encanto. Now, I think We Don't Talk About Bruno is an absolute bop, and I think it's a travesty that Encanto thought Dos Oruguitos or Oruguitas, like it makes sense that that would be the one that they submit for best original song because that's the one with the most
The
emotional
emotional
resonance.
crux of the film. Yeah.
Yeah. But We Don't Talk About Bruno's We Don't Talk About Bruno. So I want to acknowledge that because that's not the song that I picked. I
We will talk
picked
about that more when we get to my Encanto pick because we have markedly different opinions about this matter. But
oh,
keep
okay.
going.
I picked Surface Pressure.
Yeah,
And
great track.
so it's a great track, and it's also something that for me it just kind of sets the stage that hey, all of the people in this family have just been burden is a wrong word, but it kind of is the appropriate word because they all have these gifts and they don't have a whole lot of autonomy to live their lives the way that they want to. They are in service to this town and the pressure of living up to the family legend. And like this was among one of the most fun musical sequences because who doesn't love dancing donkeys?
Yeah.
And when I asked my oldest, who's your favorite character in Encanto, knowing full well, I know my daughter, I'm like, it's going to be Isabella because she's she's the pretty one and she is the one that is the most fond after.
Yeah.
She said Luisa. And I was like, really? Why? Like, and looking back, I was like, oh, I sounded like a real asshole probably, because Luisa's a great character.
Yeah.
And she said, because she shows that it's okay to not be okay. Like, oh, okay. If that's the lesson that you take away from this, then cool. I'll take it. And she also said, like, hey, being strong is not all that it's cracked up to be. This is very insightful for a 5-year-old. I don't
Yeah.
know what happened here, but I like this. And if I'm being completely honest, this was also partially for time as well.
I get it.
Okay, your next three.
All right. So right after Wicked's Defying Gravity, again, I'm now at track 4, what I think should be the second best or second biggest, however you want to phrase it, a song based off of my methodology and how I make these. And I went with You Can't Stop the Beat from Hairspray, because when you look at the complete list of my album, I do not think there is a more contagious, and I use
Oh,
that word very deliberately.
absolutely not.
Yeah, there's not a more contagious song than You Can't Stop the Beat. To the title's namesake, for a reason. I love this song and want to dance and sing to this song so much. And I think that's just the power of it. There's an energy to this that very few songs in any musical ever approaches. And this transcends that, let alone if you the context of the film and what it
Hmm.
stands for about racial equality and so much heavy stuff that you don't really think about just listening to the lyrics of the song, because the lyrics of the song are just talking about the progress of time and how things change. But within the context of the narrative framework, it is so much more than that. It's such a fun listen. The song is so entertaining. And I thought, after coming off the high of Defying Gravity and that emotional weight at the end of that song, this at least keeps the energy going while bringing down the emotionality so that it's not like a sharp fall off for the listener, and it feels natural while continuing the flow of the album. After that, I have the Elephant Love Medley from Moulin Rouge. This is the one jukebox musical that I kept, but that's because this really doesn't fit the context of the other jukebox musicals I was talking about, where it's exclusively ABBA, exclusively the Beatles, or exclusively Elton John. This is a mishmash of a bunch of different artists over the course of decades, including some songs that are a medley of multiple songs within one. This is one of the tracks where, for me, where I said, I didn't think there was an option. When I thought Moulin Rouge, it had to be the Elephant Love Medley. You could make a solid argument that it could have maybe been the Roxanne Tango. And I would understand why some people would want that, but that's still largely just Roxanne. Whereas the Elephant Love Medley in one track exemplifies why audiences fell in love with this movie back in, was this 2001?
2001.
Because it brought this energy and vibe of, I know all these songs, but they're recontextualized in such a unique and fascinating way that I've never heard them this way before, even though you have absolutely heard all of these songs before. And also, just duets are not appreciated enough.
No.
Love duets don't happen nearly as much as they should or could. And this is, I think, one of the defining love duets in musicals in the last 25 years, in this century. And Nicole Kidman and Ewan McGregor are insanely talented. Their vocal performances here are exceptional. Ewan, especially, I want to give him all the credit in the world. He blew people's socks off. I don't think most people knew him. He was still relatively new. Like, Nicole had been an established star at this point. Like, people knew her name, but like, Ewan had just done Train Spotting, which was still seen as a small indie Danny
Hmm.
Boyle film just a few years prior to this. Like, he was still small potatoes, and to come out like this and just knock it out of the park, home run right out of the gate. It's such a catchy medley. Again, these are all songs you're going to know, and it's so entertaining. And again, this keeps the energy up from You Can't Stop the Beat, but it's changing it such that now we're doing other things. Now we're doing a love ballad that still has pop to it, but it's allowing us to get into other types of songs, which brings me to my next song, which is America from West Side Story. West Side Story, I could have gone a couple different ways. I could have gone Tonight. It's probably the most famous song, or I could have gone something like Maria. Tonight works really well within the context of the musical. I didn't want it really outside of that, though. It loses some of its flavor. Maria is just a really heavy ballad, and I
Mhm.
couldn't think of a good place where that would really fit. Other things I was considering is maybe like the Jets song, which is just great to open, or like Officer Krupke, just because that's funny. But
Mhm.
like again, outside of the context of the musical, it doesn't really have that. But America really works outside of the context of the musical, and also it gives this album a much different sound than any other track that I have on the album, because now we're getting like a flamenco, a Latin infused tango, and I just find that propulsive and attractive in such a interesting way, and especially because in a weird way this is also a duet, which is intentional that I put it right after the Elephant Love Medley, but it's a duet in which we're fighting. In the Elephant Love Medley, it is two people falling in love and discovering that they are meant for each other. In America, they're not fighting in the sense that we're going to break up with each other, but it is an argument. It is one person saying America is awful. We shouldn't be here. We should go back to our home country. They are racist here and they treat us terribly. And the other person saying, okay, that may be the case, but I still love it here because this is a land of opportunity and we can make a better lives for ourselves. And don't you want to stay here with me because you love me? And isn't that enough? And setting aside whether or not you agree with either of those sentiments for either which way, I think that's a very interesting way to construct a song, especially because it's not framed as a traditional duet. This is upbeat. This is
Yep.
energetic. This is flowing and representative, and almost like the In the Heights 96,000 that I mentioned earlier. This is a community based song because while it starts off just as Bernardo and Anita having a conversation, a debate, an argument with each other, it eventually turns into the entire Puerto Rican community there in Manhattan as all of the women start to side with Anita and all of the men start to side with Bernardo. And especially if, again, you've seen the movie, this has some of the best dance numbers in the entire film. The choreography here is stunning. The way Spielberg shoots it, giving us long cuts without editing interruptions, is beautiful and breathtaking. And I just think it transpires so well to this musical track. It's beautiful to listen to. And again, just keeps the energy up, but it's evolving it so that now almost every track we're going deeper and deeper into this album. There's energy to it, but there's passion and emotionality behind each track that gives us something to chew on and something different to think about. And I like that. And you said you had America as well. So talk to us about why you picked it and why it works for you.
So part of the reason why I picked America is it's interesting that this song is like very relevant today.
Yes.
And it's just kind of shocking that it's still very relevant today, given everything that's going on. Ariana DeBose, just she's a singer. And like
Mhm.
that joke that they made at the Critics' Choice Awards last year irritated the living shit out of me because I get it. They were saying like some actors think that they can sing, and then they pan to her and she's like, or like something along the lines of saying like she's an actress that can sing. It's like, well, no, like she was a Broadway singer way before she was in a lot of movies. So how dare you in a
Yeah.
way? But just this song, it's just like you said, it's so kinetic and it kind of just represents just so much of just the conflict within this particular community and just the struggle in general that kind of is propelling everything to kind of just this boiling point within the context of the movie itself. And I see, to me, you're right. There are other songs that could potentially have worked. For me, with West Side Story, this was the song. This was always going to be the song for me because I appreciate what the other songs can do, but this is the one that no matter what, I will continually listen to and is on a lot of my movie playlists that aren't 80 minutes long. The Moulin Rouge one, we'll talk more about that because Moulin Rouge is one of my favorite movies. I remember when I first saw that in theaters, I actually went on a date to go see that when I was in high school, and it changed a lot of how I perceive certain things. And Moulin Rouge, to me, in this list, that was the only movie where I considered multiple songs to be on the list. But I stuck to the rule that's like I can only have one song for this. And I didn't pick the Elephant Love Song medley because it's on three of my other mix CDs that I've done for this podcast. So I was like, no, I can't do that again because I love that medley. It's so good. And the way that they weave
It's beautiful.
everything so seamlessly, because there are two parts in Moulin Rouge that I consider just cinema perfection. So the scene where Ewan McGregor first starts singing "My Gift Is My Song" and it lights up Paris. The first time I saw it, I got the chills because you're not expecting him to, like, you are kind of, because he's obviously setting up that he's going to start singing your song, but the way that Baz Luhrmann, or like the way it's choreographed and the way that they filmed it, it's magic when that
Yeah.
happens. And then the part where they're singing "I Will Always Love You" during that Elephant Love Song medley, and
The
the
fireworks are going off. Yep.
exactly. And Nicole Kidman is like, "You're gonna be bad for business, I can tell." It's just it's a beautiful moment. And yeah, like, and it sucks because a movie like that, like, most of the songs were ineligible for a best original song because they're not original songs. And why the one original song wasn't nominated is beyond me, but whatever. It is what it is. But we'll talk more about the song that I picked a little bit later on. Okay, my next three. My next one is my Les Mis song, and I picked "On My Own." And the reason why I picked "On My Own" versus "I Dreamed a Dream," which ostensibly is a much better song, a much more powerful song, a probably better song as well. That song probably won Anne Hathaway the
Not
Oscar.
probably,
It did.
definitely.
So because
Definitely won her an Oscar.
because I picked "On My Own" because when I was in seventh grade choir, we did a bunch of songs for Les Miserables. And I remember the person that they got for like a solo part for that, she just sang it so well. And I just remember just it really sticking with me. So "On My Own," it's a beautiful song, and I just really like it. And also this was a time cut as well. My next one is from The Greatest Showman, and it's "This Is Me." And look, there are lots of songs in The Greatest Showman that are strong contenders potentially to have on this. None of them has the emotional weight and the "fuck off, this is just," it's an anthem song. And it's really powerful and accompanying just with a powerhouse vocal performance as well. It's just a perfect way for this quote unquote family, and completely setting aside the fact that making a musical about P.T. Barnum, like in this way, is like, it's a bit disingenuous because this is not exactly who he was. However, in the context of the movie, it's still a great song about having agency over yourself and just, "this is who I am, world, fucking deal with it." And I love that. And then my last one in this group, I did end up picking "City of Stars" from La La Land. I
Yeah.
totally get what you're saying, and I guess I'm just one of those suckers who are like, "Yep, I like this song."
No,
So
to be clear, I like it. I think it's a good song. I just think that it's one of those movies and one of those musicals where almost every song is great. So, and some are just going to stand above others. And for me, there are just multiple other songs that stand above that one. I still
mhm.
think it's a great song. I still enjoy listening to it. I just think there are others that are better.
But
So I don't fault you at all for picking that.
I also agree with you that I don't understand how that got best song, not some of the other ones. But
Audition song.
yeah,
I don't understand it.
yeah. So, all right, that is my next group of three. So, why don't you've got seven, eight, and nine. So, what'd you go with?
I have How Far I'll Go from Moana as my next one, right after America. Again, now we're getting into unique films that have some kind of cultural impact to them. I think I intentionally put those back to back for a reason. This is also an anthem song. America is not quite an anthem song, but it has that kind of ambition and messaging behind it. But How Far I'll Go definitely does. Obviously, you can consider putting You're Welcome here from Moana. That's pretty much the only two choices, really, if you want to be honest about that movie. Not that there aren't other great songs, don't get me wrong, but if you're gonna pick a song from Moana to put on a playlist to represent Moana, it's one of those two.
Yeah.
And seeing as I already had a Lin-Manuel Miranda rapping song in 96,000 from In the Heights, I didn't want to double up on that and do You're Welcome. And also, I don't need the rock poorly rapping. I wanted some actual singing. So I did How Far I'll Go. It's a beautiful song, a powerful anthem. It brings tears to people's eyes, and it deserves to be here. And I think it does a great job of following up America, and then immediately leading into 3090 from Tick Tick Boom. This is one that I actually had a really tough time with because there's a lot of great musical numbers that Jonathan Larson made for this film. I debated Therapy. That was probably the one that really came close to me. But there's another track right after this that almost has a very similar kind of sentimentality, that in terms of how it articulates its lyrics and how two people talk and interact with each other, that it felt it would be too similar to do that. So I didn't pick Therapy. I actually really wanted to go Sunday. Sunday is my favorite song in the film, but again, another one of those outside of the context of the film. It's a song about people having brunch and drinking orange juice, and it doesn't make much sense, and it's just like, why is that? It would just feel out of place. Another one that I considered is Why, the track Why, which is the emotional conclusion of the film, but that song is so heavy that I just didn't feel that there was a good place to make it work within the context of my album. So I went with 3090, which again just keeps up the energy, keeps up the enthusiasm, maintains the same vibes and tones of the album that I've developed so far. And it's just insanely catchy. It's very fun to sing along. It's also, as someone who is in his middle ages now, very relatable in the idea of like, oh my gosh, I've accomplished nothing. I might as well be 90 years old. But in reality, you still have so much more life ahead of you, and there's so much more you can accomplish. But just there's a very relatable sentimentality to that messaging that is unfortunately attractive in a song. And
Yeah.
so just being able to relate to that, I just think it works so incredibly well. So I wanted to keep that one going. And again, since most of my album so far has been catchy, singable songs, it just felt like the natural fit. This next one is where I really went with a personal pick, and that's We Both Reached for the Gun from Chicago. The Cell Block Tango is what 99% of people are going to probably pick
Like
when
this
they,
guy, like this
yep,
guy will
yeah.
soon. Yeah.
And that's totally valid and understandable. The Cell Block Tango is the song from Chicago. But as I said, I've already picked several of quote unquote the songs from movies. And going back to my time constraint, Cell Block Tango is 7 minutes and 22 seconds. I already devoted 7 minutes and 40 seconds to Defying Gravity.
Yeah.
You're at that point talking, if I decided to do that, I'm devoting about 18% of my runtime to just two songs. And I couldn't bring myself to do that. And this is where I just got to be a little bit selfish because it's my album.
Exactly.
I fucking love We Both Reached for the Gun. I think that is one of the most creative and unique songs that has ever been written in a musical. It is, for those unaware, it is portrayed as a lawyer playing their client who is in prison, potentially going to death row for murder, like a ventriloquist puppet. And while they're doing that, they are then putting on a performance in front of the press syndicate so that they can get the press to write good press about their client. And they're doing that while turning the press into puppet mannequins as well. Visually, in terms of the film, again, this is like 96,000 from In the Heights. If you haven't seen this film, go to YouTube, search We Both Reached for the Gun, and you will have a great time. It is very entertaining in how it's visually portrayed. And the song is just brilliant. I think Renee Zellweger does a great job with her attitude and spunk to the number, especially with the visualization of her as a mannequin puppet. And I think Richard Gere does a terrific job as well, doing his really crappy voice throwing techniques, which is 100% intentional. That's how the song is written, but it's adds so much flavor and humor to the song. And I just think it's just such a hoot. This is one of my favorite songs to sing along to. And again, it was because of this song that I didn't pick Therapy, the track before for Tick Tick Boom, just because of with this, with Richard Gere and Renee Zellweger going back and forth already for we both reach for the gun, and then the interaction with the press. It felt a little too similar to the back and forth in Therapy that Andrew Garfield has with, oh my gosh, and I'm forgetting her name now.
Vanessa Hudgens.
Yes,
Or
thank you.
yeah.
So those are my next three. Again, all different types of songs now really just trying different types of things, showing the kind of the capabilities of what you can do with a musical, especially in We Both Reach for the Gun. That's where my next three tracks went.
So you've already mentioned two of my next tracks. So I did pick Therapy from Tick Tick Boom
Because it's awesome.
because
It's
it's an
great.
awesome song, very much so. And I did pick Cell Block Tango from Chicago. And look,
Because
I
it's
think
awesome. It's a great
I,
song.
I I think I think Chicago is it's a fun movie. It's great. I've never This is gonna sound a little sacrilege because I'm from the Chicagoland area. I've never been a huge fan of Chicago, but I still can enjoy the music. And I thought that just the musical sequence in Cell Block Tango, the way that it was shot and the way that they just did everything was just electric. And I thought that that was really cool. So I ended up those were just kind of basic picks. And this next track is the closest that I'm going to have to a cheat because it's only 7 seconds long. And it's not even technically a song, but I wanted to slide something in from the Muppet movie. And it's Are You a Man or a Muppet? It doesn't even count because it's like the pre thing for Muppet or Man. But it also segues into the next song, which I'll get into my next track, which is also sung by Amy Adams. So it's a cheat. It's cheap. I don't give a shit. It's my list. So
It's
that's
your playlist. Do what you want.
exactly. The Muppet one was a little tricky for me to figure out because I hadn't seen the Muppet movie in a really long time because I remember thinking that I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it enough.
That is a
And
wrong opinion to have, but please continue.
it is a opinion to have, not a wrong opinion, but it's one that I think I owe it to myself and also to my kids because I did something on Christmas Eve. We watched a Muppet Christmas Carol, and my oldest thought it was fine. And that is a wrong opinion. And that to me also indicates that I have not done my job by introducing the Muppets
Yeah, you
enough
need to bring some Muppets into their lives.
to my kids. Because when I suggested, hey, maybe we should watch a Muppet Christmas Carol, she was like, no. I'm like, let me rephrase that. We're going to watch a Muppet Christmas Carol. So you're gonna shut the fuck up and you're gonna watch this. And she thought it was cool. She thought it was fun. She thought that the production values were really good. And she thought the songs were great. But she just thought that the movie was fine. And that's when I realized that I failed her as a parent. So I'm going to be introducing more Muppet stuff in their lives, and that includes eventually getting to the Muppet movie, which I know I owe it a rewatch.
I think you'll appreciate it more upon rewatch.
Yeah,
It is brilliant.
yeah. So yeah, not much to say about these because they're like, with the exception of the one from the Muppets, these would be like obvious picks for these. And man, I love Tick Tick Boom. It's just such a great and unique story, and Andrew Garfield is just outstanding in
Terrific.
that. Can I ask a quick aside question? Was Rent ever in the consider in
Never,
the never? Is
never,
it
never
is
even
it
close.
is it because you didn't like the movie, or you've just never been a fan of Rent, or a combination of both?
It's a combination of both, but much more condemnation of the film. I do
Mm.
not think that's a good movie in the slightest. I have problems with the stage performance as well. I've seen both the film and the stage production. Here's what I'll say in the nicest way possible. It is a damn tragedy that we lost Jonathan Larson. For most people, I assume they don't know this, so I'm going to say if you do not know or are not aware, the moment a play hits a stage, that does not mean the play is done and finalized and that it will never change ever again. In fact, even after something hits as big of a stage as Broadway, sometimes a play is still reworked, lines of dialogue are changed, or even entire songs are scrapped and redone to make things work better, because now that they're in front of the audience, they understand the reactions they're getting or the flow that they're seeing over the course of an entire performance. Things can change. Tragically, we lost Jonathan Larson before Rent ever went to stage on Broadway. He never got the opportunity to make what would have been inevitable. I want to stress that inevitable, they would have happened, and necessary. Also, I want to stress that necessary rewrites. And I think that it shows. I
Mhm.
think it very much plays and reads like a first draft or maybe a second draft, to be fair. And I think there are a lot of awkward moments in the dialogue, in the characterizations, and in a lot of these songs. Frankly, if I'm being completely honest, it shocks me to this day that Rent got as popular as it did. I think it's more that it just at the right point in time and the right
Yeah.
point of history touched on a cultural moment and where we were with the AIDS crisis, and especially with it being in New York, and New York being a much more liberal leaning city and demographic, and the type of audiences that see musicals are normally more liberal people. And there was a relationship that formed with Rent that made it transcendent. I'm not denying any aspect of that. In fact, I think that was very, not just culturally significant, it was important. I'm
Mhm.
glad it happened. It needed to happen. I genuinely attribute Rent as part of the reason why the AIDS epidemic is virtually non-existent these days, is because it brought a lot of attention to it, and a lot of efforts were put into stomping out those problems. And we live in a world now where if you watch the play or the movie, it almost feels just dated, because these are just not cultural societal concerns anymore. Not that they've completely gone away. Of course, people still have AIDS that still exists, but it can be rectified. You can survive.
Yeah.
That used to never be the case. I say all that to say it just, I recognize the flaws and the faults in the production, and it makes it so that I don't get the most out of the experience. Again, not that it's bad, or at least the stage production, not that it's bad. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And with that said, though, I think that the movie is objectively bad. I think it is a poor adaptation, and it sucks that it comes from someone like Chris Columbus, who I really love as a director and has given us so much joy in life throughout the years, with from Home Alone to Harry Potter and all these other things. Man, I don't know what it was, especially when almost the entire cast from Broadway came on to do the film, other than the switch out because
The the person that they got to play Joanne and the person
yeah,
that they got to
because
play
she was
Mimi.
pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Mimi
With
was Rosario Dawson.
yeah.
But other than that, yeah, it just doesn't work for me. I don't think that the movie is good. I don't enjoy rewatching it at all. And so no, unfortunately, since the film itself, now there are individual songs. Seasons of Love is like the banger of bangers. I would have loved to put Seasons of Love on this playlist, but that means that Rent would have had to make my list of best 25 musicals,
Right.
and Rent didn't stand a chance of making my list. So
Mm.
unfortunately, that just was never going to happen.
Don't say unfortunately, it's your list. So you
Yeah.
should be, you dictate however you want. The movie to me is perfectly fine. It loses a lot when the stage performance is so like condensed in one area.
Yes.
And that's one thing that's something that kind of like it always concerns me with any Broadway musical is that if you expand and you're now like going around to like different parts of a city, it's like, is that going to take away potentially from what was kind of pseudo charming or at least like a shtick in the show? And Ren is one of those that's like, yeah, it kind of takes it away a little bit. Don't deny the fact also that it is it is a little dated as well because yeah, just because it is, and it is now just more culturally significant than like good, like
Yeah.
considered good now. So I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that. All right. Okay. Your next group. So 10, 11, 12.
All right. So my next one is going to be A World of Your Own from Wonka. I actually had a really hard time with Wonka and trying to find the right place for this. I love this movie. I think it's terrific. The thing is, I think A World of Your Own is the best song in terms of the structure of how the song is written and constructed. I think it is technically the best, and I think it is the most emotionally fulfilling, but it's kind of a different vibe than the rest of the movie. In fact, my favorite song is the more energetic opener, Hatful of Dreams. I think
Mhm.
that song is fantastic. I love it immensely. And other options like You Never Had Chocolate Like This, I think is great. But I really came back to over and over A World of Your Own. And I thought, given that so much of my album had been so high energy, it'd be nice to have a little bit slower of a ballad that was still uplifting in its messaging, but maybe not as high tempo musically as everything that had come before it, just to give the listener a little bit of a chance to breathe, because I think that's important as well. So I wanted to do that. And then I moved on, and this is where I have I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables. I want to be very, very clear. This is not remotely the song that I wanted to pick from Les Miserables, because if it was up to me, in a heartbeat, would go Do You Hear the People Sing or One Day More. In particular, Do You Hear the People Sing is like the political anthem rallying cry that like brings me to tears when I watch this film or when I see this stage production live, especially when we get the reprise of that to end at the end and you see the ghosts of all the people who have died along the way. I am a mess, a waterfall of tears in the best way. I think it is beautiful and propulsive and compelling. Again, just a political anthem in the best way. But this is another one of those where I capitulated to there is a song that is the song for this thing, and it is I Dreamed a Dream. It
Mhm.
literally won Anne Hathaway an Oscar. Don't get me wrong, she's great in this film outside of this song, but it is because of this song that she won it, because this performance is so magnetic and powerful, and you can feel the strain and pain in her performance, which is so important because this wasn't sung infamously. This wasn't sung in a sound booth. They sang all these songs for the production of this film on set. So this is Anne pouring her heart out and her soul to anyone who dares listen and is on the set that day. And we just got such an authentic and powerful rendition of this song that it just felt disingenuous for me to almost consider anything else. And again, I say that as someone that it's not even close to my favorite song of this musical. If it was up to me, there are several I would have above it. So I just felt it was too powerful and too important. But at this point now we need to pick up the tempo again. We've kind of gone down with A World of Your Own and even more somber with I Dreamed a Dream. So I doubled that up with a different form of a dream, because I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables is when your dreams go awry and everything falls apart, the tragedy of a broken dream and a nightmare, in fact. So my next track is I've Got a Dream from Tangled. With Tangled, I could have gone a number of different ways. I could have done I See the Light. Now I See the Light is probably what most people would go. That's, I would say, easily the most famous song. You could maybe go When Will My Life Begin? Oh, or even honestly, Mother Knows Best is one of the best villain songs we've gotten from Disney in quite a while. So I would have been okay with that as well. But I wanted something that was, especially as a contrast to I Dreamed a Dream, it helped even more that they literally both use the word dream in the title of their song for different meanings. But it just works as such a contrast of, okay, sometimes we have that darkness just before the dawn, but then the dawn does come. You can have that nightmare or that broken promise, but sometimes there is a beauty in optimism and hope. So putting these as a back to back is 100% intentional, and
Mhm.
I think it works to really propel the energy back up in the album itself after being more reflective. I'm sorry, with A World of Your Own and I Dreamed a Dream. So I've Got a Dream, just showing the optimism and hope and possibility, having all these different people in the community, these villains that are perceived to be evil, but really they're good people with kind hearts. And then again, just Mandy Moore has an amazing voice. Her
Mhm.
performance here is so charming and innocent and sincere, and it's just great. It's a fun song, and I thought it belonged here, and this would be a good place for it.
I've Got a Dream is just one of those songs that just subverts your expectations in the best possible way because when you go into this pub slash bar slash ruffian place of solitude, I guess, you don't expect them to break into a song like this where everybody's showcasing their dreams, and it's just such a fun song, and I really enjoyed that one. And that's a great pick because it does kind of go against the grain because My Tangled Song is an obvious pick. And it is the one that when it comes to visuals, seeing that part on the big screen was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful. So that's kind of plus also it's just a gorgeous song as well. So but we'll get to that soon enough. My next three. So this is where I have the Amy Adams connection, and I picked That's How from Enchanted. And I considered Happy Work Song because it's a fun song. And I considered a couple others, but this one to me just this is a song that I can just like listen to compared to some of the other ones. But this one just it's such a fun sequence where they're just going through parts of New York and it just it's catchy. I really enjoyed this one, and my watching my daughter like dance around to this. She didn't do that with any of the other songs to Enchanted. This is the one that she enjoyed the most. And even when she saw Disenchanted, which I'm glad that they made Disenchanted because it's cool that it got a sequel. I'm not necessarily sure Disenchanted is the sequel that Enchanted deserved, but the fact that it got a sequel, good for them. And my daughter, when we watched Disenchanted, she was like, there was no song like That's How, like, yeah, and I just left it at that because I had no as a parent you understand sometimes you're just like yep period
Yeah.
that's it that's all you got. So I considered other ones from Enchanted, but I kept going back to this. I was like this is gonna be the song. My next song is from Wonka. It's You've Never Had Chocolate Like This, and like this was just another cool sequence for that, just showcasing a lot of just the visual look of the movie. And then I don't know, like you thought like I'm curious your thoughts, like Timothy Chalamet as Wonka.
I actually liked him. I thought he did a good job. I thought he embraced and portrayed that kind of zany, off-kilter energy that I'm looking for in that character. And I really appreciate that because he's the younger one. He just hadn't been jaded by life yet. I could still see him turning into the Gene Wilder version,
Mhm.
but he just hasn't been disturbed enough.
Yeah.
Enough time hasn't passed. He hasn't been let down by life. And so seeing that kind of optimism in him was endearing and charming. And while he may not be the most profound singer, I thought he did a serviceable job
Yeah.
singing these songs as well. So Wonka made my list for a reason. I think Timmy does a good job.
Yep. I would agree with that, and I think he gets an unnecessary amount of flack from people
Yeah.
who are like, singing is like isn't as good. It's like, shut the fuck up. And then my last song in this group is When the Sun Goes Down from In the Heights. Now, not the conventional pick at all
Yeah.
for In the Heights, but to me, what really stands out for this watching this part on screen with the dancing on the side of the building, I thought was really cool. And to me, also watching In the Heights, look, I knew that Anthony Ramos could sing. I didn't realize Corey Hawkins could sing. Like he is fantastic in this, and come to find out that like,
Someone
oh,
didn't watch Straight Outta Compton.
sure, but
I'm
come to
joking.
think that he is also he's a Juilliard trained performer.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was just so unexpected because coming out of Straight Outta Compton and the other stuff that he had been before in the Heights, I just was not expecting him to be that great of a singer. And I just like the visual appeal of this. And I get it for picking that in terms of like a song might not always be the best criteria for it, but I'm also a guy who's like, hey, if it can make me feel things, then I can't help but at least pick it. Conventional wisdom says that 96,000 is is the song. And I wrestled with this a lot and I settled on this, even if I do slightly regret it a little bit, but I do love 96,000 because
Yeah.
in the Heights, like it irks me to no end that In the Heights was not more successful in
It
the
will
theaters.
forever piss me off. It is genuinely one of the best musicals that we've gotten in decades, and like
Mhm.
so many people don't even know it exists. It
Yeah.
makes me so sad.
It makes me so sad.
Like
And
it made my top five. I think I had it in my top three actually on
yeah.
my list for a reason. Like it
Mhm.
is magnificent.
Because also In the Heights is a perfect example of just the discourse that has come about with musicals lately.
Hmm.
Because you mentioned before how we are at a point in our society where when it comes to musicals, like they don't even advertise them as
Yeah,
musicals anymore.
it tricked people.
And it sucks because I don't understand why people have such disdain for musicals. And me and you, we love musicals. We grew up with musicals, so maybe that's just ingrained in our blood, but maybe for other people it's just not their thing. And those people are just wrong. But it just sucks that the current movie going discourse right now and how can't we can't even advertise things as a musical anymore because we think it's going to hurt box office is such bullshit and I hate it. But here we are.
Yep.
So, all right, that's my next three. So, 13, 14, 15 for you.
My next one is also That's How from Enchanted. I considered something like So Close, which is a beautiful ballad, but to me it had to be that again, just now that we've ramped back up after the little bit of breather I gave my audiences with my album after the dream of Tangled, this just felt like another great way to continue the energy and the fun and the excitement. I also think that this works very well, and I did this intentionally back to back with Tangled, as this is a song from a Disney movie that's parodying Disney movies.
Mhm.
And that's what makes Enchanted so fun is it's Disney poking fun of itself and the whole genre as a whole, but really itself. And so I thought it'd be nice to literally do that kind of song right after one of those kinds of songs, especially because you get those little quips from McDreamy throughout the track where he's like, I don't sing, I don't dance. And it's just so entertaining and funny.
Mhm.
I think it works really well. And it was about the only way I could also make it work because there's a lot of Disney and I needed to find a way to space all these out. And it became very obvious that it was not possible to space these out in the way at which I wanted, so that there were multiple tracks between every Disney song without really hindering the flow of the album itself. So I thought that the next best way to tackle that problem would be to put the make fun of Disney song right after a Disney song.
Mhm.
And I do think that they actually work really well in tandem when you're listening to this as a playlist.
Yeah.
The next one I picked is Joanna from Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. This was really hard for me because I wanted to pick a little priest. Was probably my first option. The Worst Pies in London, also a potential option. The fact is that I was really running out of time, and Joanna is a breezy 1 minute and 57
Mhm.
seconds. And that looked perfect for my needs. And also, separately, I genuinely do believe that even though the song is so short, it is one of the most beautiful songs of the musical. It is very powerful and it's very purposefully one of the only uplifting and optimistic songs of the whole production. Even though the song is sung as a ballad in terms of its tempo and pacing, the lyrical construction of the song and the substance behind the lyrics is one of hope and
Mhm.
love and longing in a good way, that it still felt like it maintained the energy that I was looking for, even though it was a little bit more somber in terms of its musical tone. And also, Jamie Campbell Bower just has a beautiful singing voice when singing this track. And then this is where I have my Muppets track. So again, this was tough. I wanted to do Man or Muppet because that's like the
It's
track.
the song. Yeah.
But the thing is, and I've mentioned it a couple times, but this is the definitive one. This 100% does not work without the context of the film. Now, you made it work because you did the 8-second intro to the actual song. You didn't do the song itself. And as much as I love the song itself, it won an Oscar. It just doesn't work outside of, if you're not watching the movie, you're like,
Like,
what
what
is
is
this?
this?
I
What
don't
is
even
happening?
understand what's going on. So other things I consider were like Rainbow Connection. And as much as I love that, well, that's actually just a remake of Rainbow Connection from the original Muppet movie. So that didn't feel like it really got the gist of this new Muppet movie. So then I was considering other songs, and you actually go to look at, hey, okay, so what are the popular songs from this? If you go and look at the playlist, the play count on Spotify, the most popular songs are the Muppets cover of We Built This City by Starship, and the second most is Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard by Paul Simon. So now we're, and again, that's what the Muppets do, they cover things. But I was really searching for something that felt like Muppets, that felt high energy, and that worked for this movie, that would make you think of the Muppet movie, not, I mean, that would make you think of the Muppets and not the Muppet movie. And so I went with Life's a Happy Song, which is the intro track. And I think it does a great job here, especially in the wake of Joanna, of bringing back up the energy one more time and showing that life's going to be okay. What, there are things that are going to get us down. Sometimes we will long for lovers that will never be a part of our life, or whatever other mood you could have extracted from the playlist. But this song is just great. It's so funny and so original. You can even hear some of the cameos in the track. I love that you can hear Mickey Rooney in it. It
Mhm.
even has a part where Amy Adams gets to be like all dour and somber for like a minute in the middle for like no reason. And it's so silly because then it ends right with happiness again anyway. And it's just, it encapsulates everything that makes the Muppets. And it so distinctly reminds me of this specific Muppet movie as well. And the energy that Jason Segel brought to this
Mhm.
franchise.
Yeah.
And I just thought this was so perfect. So I had to have this here as it's kind of the intro to the end of my album.
Got it. All right. My next three. This is where I have my Moulin Rouge song, and I pick the El Tango de Roxanne. And so this by no means is the conventional pick. It's not even the best song on it. And the reason why I picked it is mainly because I've picked so many other Moulin Rouge songs to go on various playlists. I think Come What May is just it's a beautiful song. It is the most stripped down song out of all of the other ones that are all about spectacle and yeah, I see what I did there. But what I enjoy about this though is the gruffness of Jose Feliciano's voice in this, as we're getting something from his perspective as well, because I think I think his character is more of just like a joke throughout the course of the movie because he's got narcolepsy and it's funny when he falls asleep from time to time. But I think I wish his character had more to do because I think he was an interesting character that could have been explored a little bit more, and it was nice that we could explore a little bit more about his character here. The tango sequence as well. I just thought that this was a creative way to incorporate the song Roxanne into this because it was so unexpected. I, like an idiot, listened to this album before I saw the movie. So
Oh,
the movie was spoiled right off the bat, which it irks me a little bit that the movie is spoiled a little bit at the beginning, but whatever. It was a choice, and it still doesn't change the fact that the ending's really fucking sad. But I like this sequence a lot also because this comes at a very pivotal moment in the movie when Christian's got to make a choice. Like he's either gonna try to stick with this relationship or he just can't fathom anymore that she's still a courtesan. She's still a woman of the night or whatever we want to call it. And even just the part at the end when he's just walking around and he's singing is like, believe me when I say I love you. And he's looking up, he sees that she's with the Duke, and she's just doing her job, doing what she needs to do in order to keep this production going. And she still sings like come what may during this, and it puts him at ease. But Yeah, I thought that this sequence was really fun, really inventive. It's not my first choice, but I've picked the other three songs to death, so I got to give a little bit of love to this one because I do think
Absolutely.
a little unique. This so my next song is from Moana, and I picked like a super unconventional song in Moana because I do agree with you that how far I'll go is like just the best song
Yeah.
in Moana. I also want to give a little love to Shiny because
Yeah. No, Shiny's great.
Shiny is a blast. I would pick Shiny over You're Welcome because You're Welcome is fine. It's The Rock just like it's Disney's not saying being able to say no to The Rock's like no no like I we're good right no
I mean,
no
the reason why
fuck
I mentioned it earlier is just like, when talking about songs that transcend the movie and
Mhm.
just become part of cultural zeitgeist, that whether or not I think The Rock is a good singer slash rapper, or how well it works within the context of the film is irrelevant to the fact that that song has taken on a life of its own, and
It-
it is so much bigger than the
mhm.
movie it came from. So
Yeah.
that's the reason I was saying I felt like I had to choose between the two,
Yeah.
not because I actually wanted that in consideration.
Oh yeah, no, I get you. So I thought really hard about what song I wanted to pick from Moana, and for the most part, it was going to be How Far I'll Go. But for time purposes, and then also just to kind of change it up a little bit, I picked Know Who You Are. And the reason why is because that sequence at the end of the movie with the ocean parting and Tika coming towards Moana because as Moana's figured out that oh shit she's Te Fiti, so if I put the heart back in her then we'll be in good shape. So the fact that she figures it out and that sequence of her just walking through the parted ocean and she's like I've crossed the horizon to find you, and it gives me chills because it's that pivotal moment in the movie where it's like you're almost there, you're not exactly sure what's going to happen, and although like they pretty much like choreograph it, it's like yeah like that's the solution to all of this, but there's still like a small part of you that's like what's going to happen, but it's such a beautiful sequence. And I remember watching Moana in theaters because I was with my wife and she is from New Zealand. So this Moana is a very important movie to us because it just represents a lot of Polynesian culture and South Pacific culture that doesn't get a whole lot of representation. So, but that part, we were just both on the edge of our seats during that part because it's such a beautiful sequence and just it's a pivotal moment in the movie. So I opted to pick that for time, but I also opted to pick that to just try to be a little bit different. And I completely shoot myself in the foot because then I picked I See the Light from Tangled. And watching this part in theaters, I don't like 3D at all. I think 3D is a gimmick. But watching this part in 3D was pretty fucking cool. And
With the lanterns.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's a lovely song, and I don't ever use the word lovely, but it is. It's a lovely song. And Levi was somebody who's like, "Oh, you're an unexpectedly good singer," because I knew Mandy Moore could sing, but Zachary Levi, I wasn't expecting that, and that was really cool too. So yeah, bring us home with your last group.
All
Or
right. So the home stretch of the album. My next song is "This Is Me" from The Greatest Showman. Again, you picked the same thing. I actually, for as much as I have problems with the narrative of this film, for a multitude of reasons, the music here is exceptional.
the music here is awesome.
You put this music in a better constructed film, and man, this could easily be one of my favorite films ever.
Mm.
The Greatest Show, Come Alive, The Other Side, Never Enough is a moving ballad. Rewrite the Stars, From Now On is just like so energetic. There's literally a lot of options, but This Is Me is like the power anthem. I've already had a couple of anthems in different ways, but I wanted like a power anthem, like a something that you could shout from the rooftops, and
Mhm.
it felt so right after Life's a Happy Song and just being like, okay, now that we've reestablished life is great, we can be what we want to be. Let's really drive that point home of I'm capable of being whatever I want. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's the important part, is you have to accept me for who I am. And it just says so much about self-promotion in a healthy manner.
Yeah,
And Akiela Seta's voice is
just
tremendous. She's such a
beautiful.
great singer here, and the ensemble behind her is great. And again, if you've seen the film as well, the energy and the passion behind the dancing and choreography, it's with such deliberate purpose. It
Mhm.
just adds so much more to it. After that, I have my Encanto pick. My last Disney pick is We Don't Talk About Bruno. I mentioned this earlier, that we would get to this point. I don't like this song actually, but I fully recognize that this is the song from Encanto. So much so that it pissed people off when it wasn't even nominated for an Academy Award, let alone win. But I am one of those people that I think Dos Oreguitas was the right song. And I was thrilled when it got the support that it did. I think Dos Oreguitas is beautiful. It makes me cry. It makes me weep. It's everything that I look for in the kind of emotional ballad that ties together the themes and narrative of a film, unless let alone a Disney film. So Dos Oreguitas is the one I really wanted, but again, it just felt disingenuous to not do We Don't Talk About Bruno, because that just was such a massive cultural song when this movie came out. And as well, as much as I have a song of Latin flair with America
Mhm.
from West Side Story, that's more of a flamenco kind of a vibe and tempo and rhythm, whereas this is a true tango. And I hadn't had anything like that on my album so far. So even looking at it just from the composition of the album and playlist as a whole, this gives me a new flavor, a new sound to add to the palette and to the menu that I thought made it that much more interesting. And again, as much as it may not be my favorite song, I fully admit it's a bop and it's catchy as hell. And there's a reason people love it and sing along to it. So then I go to my closing song. And again, I said at the beginning, I like to close on a ballad, something that's emotional and meaningful. And this is where I have Hedwig and the Angry Inch. I have Midnight Radio. This is the song at the very end of the film that is the culmination of the journey that you've gone on throughout the entire experience. I'm not going to get into it too much for anyone that has or has not really seen the film, but I think it just lends so much emotional weight to everything that that film was trying to achieve. And I think it's a beautiful vocal rendition by Stephen Trask as well to just make it work so well. I think it's a moving song. I think it's powerful, and it really, almost going into it, I felt very early on that that was kind of the only song I could really choose to end on my playlist, and I was very very happy to get that one on there. And actually, I said Stephen Trask. I'm not sure if it's John Cameron Mitchell that sings it, or Stephen, or I'll have to, maybe just Stephen wrote the music. I'm not sure, but anyway, Midnight Radio from Hedwig and the Angry Inch is the ballad, the reflective, somber, and emotional ballad to end out my album and bring it all together. Hopefully,
This is a list of shade movie. I haven't seen it yet, and it's one of only two movies on your top 25 that I haven't seen yet.
what was the other
And
one? Out of curiosity.
the other one, the one with Bjork, the
Oh,
da-
Dancer in the
the
Dark. Yeah,
dark, yeah. So
I'm not shocked. Those are the easily probably the two most obscure of the list. So
yeah, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, though, that's something that, as someone who's a fan of musicals, you hear this come up a lot. So that to me is that's shame on me for not having seen it. The Dancer in the Dark one, that one is like, it's a little bit more understandable that I haven't seen it yet. But I feel like if I do consider myself a musical fan, I need to see Angry and Hedwig and the Angry Inch at some point. So all right, my final three. So these are the most obvious of the obvious picks. I did pick the song from Dreamgirls, the song from
yeah,
Dreamgirls. There are a lot. There's other good songs in Dreamgirls. None of them are this
yeah,
though, and it's such a powerful song. And Jennifer Hudson, holy shit! And like I hate to admit it, you can't pick any other song
no.
from. You
If
just
you're gonna
can't.
put Dreamgirls on the list, it has to be this song.
Yeah. And then kind of similar to what you did with Defying Gravity and You Can't Stop the Beat, my penultimate song is You Can't Stop the Beat because so the dancing sequences in this, like everybody gets a chance to sing. The thematic implications of it are just outstanding. And I love that this sequence and this song is legendary to this cast. Like they called it You Can't Stop to Breathe because there's so much, it's such a kinetic song. And I love it. It's so good. It's the perfect way to end Hairspray, like just the story behind it. And almost the perfect way to end this playlist, but Defying Gravity just caps it off
because
because
it's the showstopper of showstoppers.
it
Yeah.
is the showstoppers of showstoppers. And I'm very glad that you wrote the article that you did, and I'm glad that Wicked is the one that inspired it because I just hope and wish that more people could see just how powerful the medium of the musical is and just how if you just give it a chance and you just get it out of your head that these people are just singing at just random points or whatever hangups that people have when it comes to musicals, that there is appeal. And what I've been trying to do with some of these mixed CDs is that instead of saying I don't like something, it's just I haven't found my entry point yet for it. I tell myself that because I'm not a huge Pearl Jam fan. I'm not a huge fan of Smashing Pumpkins, but I'm trying to recontextualize it a little bit and say I just haven't found my entry point yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I hope to one day because it just seems like I feel like I'm contractually obligated from being from Chicago that I have to like both of them. But at the same time, I just haven't found the song that was my entry point. And I feel like it's the same thing with musicals for everybody out there is like musicals are like, so yeah. So those are our list. Final question I have for you. If your CD or if your big CD was an actual album, what's the album cover?
So I actually think about this stuff a lot all the time. In college, I went to school for graphic design. So I'm very much a fan of minimalist design, which I know is all the rage these days. In fact, some people are getting sick of it. Well, tough. That's still what I enjoy. So my pitch is a white room with white floors and white walls. And we are staring at the corner of a room, approximately 5 feet away, if that. On the walls are the logos of all of these films, but their opacity is such that you can barely see them. And they're all in black and white against the white background. But again, because of the opacity, it comes all across as a light gray, and it only has about like 15 to 20% visibility tops. So if you're looking at it closely, you can see Wicked and you can see La La Land and Moana and all these things, but from a distance it will still just look like a white room. But in the corner of that white room is a broom, is a candy bar, is a bottle of hairspray, and is a meat pie and Kermit the Frog, and that's it. And I think that is the kind of thing that's enough that if you saw that on the shelf, that would catch your attention. You'd be, what is this white room? And Kermit is sitting here with a pie, and there's a witch's broom, and he's got a chocolate bar in his hand and a can of hairspray. Like, it wouldn't make sense, but it would certainly grab you, especially the bright green of Kermit the Frog popping up against that white wall and all these things. And then once you pick it up off the shelf and you're looking at it and you're like, oh, I see what they did here. These are significant items from famous movies, and these are all
Mhm.
movie musicals. Then you start looking at the wall and seeing all the titles, flip to the back and you see the track listing, and it all clicks together. And that's the kind of design I would go for. So this minimalistic approach that on the surface seems innocuous, but when you look at it deeper, you get more depth out of it, and it's more intriguing for shoppers.
That's beautifully put. So thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that you went to school for graphic design. So
Yeah,
that's
I hated it. I love, if you can't tell by the way I just talked about, I love it when it's something I can be creative about. I very quickly after leaving school, and even while I was in school, became jaded with the process and having clients that didn't care about the art
yeah.
itself, and it really killed my passion for it. And so now I don't even do it at all remotely, unless I do it for like a friend as a personal favor or something. I'll design something for them. but I don't really do design anymore because it frustrates me. But yeah, I went to school for graphic design.
Interesting. Okay. So to me, my approach when it comes to a lot of these different album covers is trying to incorporate something that just embodies the spirit of what my playlist is. And that's usually like a screenshot of some type of one of these performances. And I kind of wrestled with a couple of different things that I could pick for this. And I did go with that scene in Moana where she's holding up the heart of Tafiti, and it the just if I could just take like a screenshot of some part of that sequence where it's just her and the ocean and just her just walking towards Tafiti, I would probably pick something like that because I can't pick another one from Moulin Rouge because Moulin Rouge has been the album cover of two of my fucking playlists, so I can't pick it again. Even though the scene where, even though your song is not on this playlist, but just that part where he sings and he lights up Paris, I would even just have something like that. But it's already, I already picked it for my movie sound or one of my movie soundtrack ones. So yeah, that's what I would pick. Heath, thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
coming
Thanks
on
for having me.
talking about your article. Again, check it out for anybody who has not read it yet because it's very well thought out, very well written, and shows the love for musicals. Where can the people find you if they want to see more and just plug anything that you're working on and plug all your stuff?
Sure, sure. You can find me on Letterboxd. That is the easiest place. I post way too many reviews on the way too many films that I watch. Search the one Heath bar or Heath Lynch. Either one should be able to find me. You can also find me at my podcast that I do with my friends Rowan Wood and Foster Harlfinger. It's called Franchise Paradiso, where we discuss all the major franchise films as they release, as well as do a lot of top 10 episode breakdowns of different topics within franchise subgenres. So that's Franchise Paradiso or on Letterboxd at the One Heath Bar.
Cool. So we'll have links to the podcast to his letterbox, and check out what he's working on, and you'll hear Keith on this more often as well. So we've got a
Yep.
couple other ones that we're looking to do. So appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Well, my friends, the time has come to end this episode of Mix CD. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to anything and everything SPDM Crew wherever you get your podcast. Join us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads, YouTube, and Blue Sky at SPDM Crew. Check out our website soon to be out at spdmcrew.com. You can follow our playlist on Spotify and Apple Music at Mike Hilty. Shout out to High Flyer Creative Studios for making our awesome logo. Greatly appreciate their support. And if you have any marketing, logo, or brand standard needs, contact them at highflyercreative.com. If you've got a podcast idea or you're interested in being part of the SPDM crew as a guest or collaborating, email us at spdmcrew@gmail.com. Until next time, no matter what happens now, you shouldn't be afraid because I know today has been the most perfect day I've ever seen.